Today we're taking a look at a couple of budget keyboard contenders sent over by the folks at Epomaker, the 75% TH80 and the 65% TH66. Both are tri-mode, feature volume knobs, plastic cases, steel plates, mostly south-facing switch sockets, and a quote-unquote gasket-like structure. These are available bare bones as well as pre-built, with Gateron Pro switches and MDA profile die-sub PBT keycaps. The ones I have here are the pre-built versions. In this video, we will be diving deep, exploring different versions under different brands, tearing the boards down and modding them, scrutinizing the sound and feel, and more. So stick around for all of that, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll know whether one of these boards should be your next one. Before we continue, let me tell you about this video's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is your one-stop destination for all things PCBs. Have an idea for the perfect keyboard layout that unfortunately doesn't exist yet? Bring it to life with PCBWay. They even offer CNC machining, injection molding, and 3D printing so that you can make your own case, plate, or whatever else you can dream up. When you're ready to get started, head on over to PCBWay.com to get an instant quote and be on your way to turning your dream project into reality. Big thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. You may be familiar with these boards under different brand names, namely Lychee G, Ducaro VN, and TechWire Veil. You can even see references to the Ducaro VN name in the manual as well as the PCBs. As far as I can tell, all of these boards are the same. From Epomaker, you can buy these two boards in a few different configurations with differing prices. The Barebones TH66 and Barebones TH80 cost $70 and $66 respectively, while the pre-built versions cost $90 and $100 respectively. I don't know why the Barebones TH66 is more expensive while the pre-built is cheaper. There's actually one more version of the TH66 available from Epomaker. This one comes with a brass plate instead of steel, is wired only instead of tri-mode, comes with Poron plate and case foam instead of EVA, is QMK VIA compatible, and as of this writing, costs $90 bare bones, discounted from $100. Both TH boards use the same software for customizing key bindings, macros, and lighting. It's all pretty standard. The keyboard shortcuts for controlling the RGB can be found in the manuals, but there's an error in the TH80s. It says that the key combo for toggling RGB is function plus space, when in reality it's function plus backspace. On the TH80, the left control LED is used as a charging indicator. It lights green while charging and turns off when the battery is full. I found this to be quite annoying. Even when you switch to wired mode or toggle RGB off, that LED stays on. For a long time, I thought that it didn't actually turn off at all because my computer was displaying the keyboard's battery as full. I even tried disconnecting the battery from the PCB and it would still stay on, but it did eventually turn off, so I guess it just needs quite a bit of time to charge. The TH66 thankfully does not have this quirk, but it does have different ones. I mentioned in the intro that these boards are mostly south-facing, and that's because the entire top row of the TH66 is north-facing. This isn't really an issue in terms of interference, since the keys on this row, even with cherry profile, are tall enough to avoid it. The LED on the one key of the TH66 juts up above the surface of the PCB. This means that for this one particular key, you will need to use a switch with the right cutout. I think these kinds of switches are labeled as SMD for surface mount devices. The Gateron Pro switches, Aqua Radiant Reds, and Boba U40s have these cutouts, but a lot of other switches, like the Gateron Milky Yellow Pros, Oil Kings, and Jaywick Blacks, do not. The QMK VIA version of the TH66 seems to have fixed this issue based on the images on its product page. It seems that both of these quirks were a consequence of the USB port placement on the PCB. The pre-built TH80 and TH66 come with the same MDA profile PBT die-sub keycaps. I don't think I've ever seen this profile before, but it does appear on keycaps.info. It's a sculpted profile and has a similar height to the OEM profile. It does not interfere with north-facing switches. The keycaps are pretty thick, seemingly about as thick as GMK, and the die sublimation is nice and clean. The font used looks good, and the colorway is pleasant. It does appear to be a clone of RamaWorks' Heavy Industry set though. If you search for MDA profile keycaps, you can find this particular set and it is labeled Heavy Industry. I guess that's why the left shift key has this factory robot arm. I'd say that out of place legend is the only negative to this keycap set. Otherwise, it's pretty solid overall. The teardown procedure for both boards is almost identical, with the only difference being the presence of two screws underneath the flip-out feet of the TH80, which do not exist on the TH66. The top case is attached to the bottom via 8 clips, 4 along the top edge and 4 along the bottom. Start by unclipping the middle 2 clips on the top and bottom edges. You can use a plastic spudger to do this or pull on the case near the clips to separate them. The clips near the corners are much tighter, so you will need to use a thin plastic tool here. Insert the tool into the gap made from unclipping the middle clips and move it toward the corner clip until it comes loose. Repeat this for each corner and the top case should slide right off. Next, lift up the PCB plate assembly from the bottom edge to avoid damage to the USB port and disconnect the battery from the PCB. You've got EVA foam underneath and in between the plate and PCB. The PCB and plate are attached with 6 screws. Unfortunately for me, I managed to strip one of the screws on the TH66, and so I was not able to separate the plate and PCB on it. Fortunately, these boards use plate mount stabilizers and so they're still accessible. For the TH80, I was much more careful with the tight screws and was able to get them all off. Both boards have the same size battery at 2200 mAh. However, on the store page of the barebones TH80, it says that the battery is 3000 mAh. I don't know if this is an error or if the barebones TH80 actually has a bigger battery than the pre-built. With both boards torn down, we can examine the so-called gasket-like mounting. There are indeed gaskets along the top and bottom cases, which seem to be made of stiff silicone. However, the gaskets seem to be flush with parts of the cases, meaning the plate doesn't just make contact with the gaskets, which is the point of a gasket mount, it also makes contact with the case itself. I guess this is why it's just gasket-like. The plate also curves along the top and bottom edges, and these also seem to rest against the bottom case. We've also got some plastic posts jutting from the bottom case that probably also make contact with the plate. Judging by the indentations left on the EVA case foam, it's apparent that the PCB also makes contact here. With all of these other points of contact, I don't know how much of an effect the gaskets are having. The boards are stiff as expected, but then gasket mounting does not always guarantee flex. I would love to determine how much of an effect this mounting style has on sound, but it doesn't seem like there's any good way to turn this into an actual gasket mount for comparison, considering how little space there is inside the case and how tight the clips are. I was sent a TH80 with Gateron Pro Blacks and a TH66 with Gateron Pro Blues. The Mad Lads actually sent me clickies. These will be my first clicky switches since my old full-sized RGB gamer board from back in 2019. Let's listen to both boards fully stock. Back when I had my gamer board, I did actually like how the Otemu Blues on it sounded, but now clickies are just obnoxious to me. I'm not sure if I'm better off. The stock TH80 actually sounds pretty good with the Gateron Pro Blacks. Next, let's put some lubed switches and some different keycaps to see how they sound. Big improvement on the TH66, of course. The TH80 sounds pretty similar, just a bit quieter and cleaner. Next, we'll pit these two head-to-head to see how they stack up against each other. I put Aqua Radiant Reds with the stock keycaps on both, and while you can see that a generous amount of lube has been applied to these stabs, I did find them inconsistent and loosely fitting on the plate. So I added some electric tape where the stabs clip on to tighten the fit, and I retuned the stabs. I cleaned out the stock lube, balanced the wires, applied 205G0 on the stems, and XHT-BDZ on the wires. There's a pretty noticeable difference between the sound of the two boards, I think. The TH66 is louder, higher pitched, and kind of sharper sounding, if that makes sense. The long pole slap of the Radiant Reds is much more audible on the smaller board. I'd say the TH80 is the thockier of the two boards, but I might actually prefer the clackier sound of the TH66. Since I can't separate the PCB from the plate on the TH66 due to the stripped screw, I'm just going to apply 2 layers of painter's tape for the tape mod and remove the case foam to make room. For the TH80, I'll do the PE foam mod only and remove the plate foam to make room. Both boards became thockier and more solid sounding after their respective mods, as expected, but to my ears the tape mod had a bigger effect on the TH66 than the PE foam mod did on the TH80. At the end of this video, I'll leave a couple of full sound tests with the following configurations: the TH66 with lubed Boba U4Ts plus Domiki Cherry Dolce, and the TH80 with stock Gateron Oil Kings plus Maxkey SA Foundation. Please stay until the end to help support the channel. Overall, these are a pair of very solid budget keyboard options. Even completely stock, they sound quite good, but don't expect any flex or bounce just because they have gaskets. And if you go with the pre-built versions, you're getting some pretty high quality keycaps along with switches that are great even without lube, as long as you're not getting the blues. These aren't the easiest boards to mod due to the tight case clips and tight PCB screws, but with the proper tools and some patience, it is manageable. I wouldn't say mods are necessary since these boards already sound pretty good out of the box, but the tape mod did result in a pretty big improvement if you're after thock. Unfortunately, these boards do have some issues that may turn you off from them depending on how you use your boards. I personally use all of my keyboards just wired and with RGB turned off, so I found the charging LED on the TH80 to be pretty annoying. I also like to frequently change the switches on my keyboards, and so being limited to SMD compatible switches on the TH66 is also kind of a deal breaker for me. You could just use a different switch on that one particular key with a raised LED, but that just feels wrong to me. Your mileage may vary, but just keep this all in mind so that you can make an informed purchase. And that wraps up this review of Epomaker's TH66 and TH80 keyboards. What do you think about them? Would you buy either of them? Do you own either of them? How has your experience been? What is your opinion on the issues I talked about? Am I being too harsh? Do you think these are actually non-issues? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, informative, entertaining, or any other positive adjective, please consider giving it a like and sharing it with a friend who might like it as well. For more enthusiast keyboard reviews, analysis, and modding journeys, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on. Thank you so much for watching.